Hello there. This is Jay Frost, and I want to welcome you to the latest session in the Philanthropy Mastermind series. So, if you're new to this, welcome. And if this is old hat for you, you can just cover your ears for the next minute as I tell everybody else exactly how to engage with this content. Before I begin and provide an introduction to our presenter today, not only do I want to welcome you, but I want to thank the people who make all this possible, and those are the folks at DonorSearch. So we won't be talking about DonorSearch today unless for some reason our presenter decides to mention them, but rather I would encourage you to take a look at their website later, both for all the content from the Philanthropy Mastermind series, which goes back to 2016, has over 500 programs, lots of great stuff there, as well as on YouTube and on your favorite podcasting channels. But also, if you're interested in your donors, you'll find that it's a great place to look to really understand where they're coming from, what they care about, how much they've given, all those important details as we build real, substantial relationships with people who care about the same things we do. So once again, that's at donorsearch.net. You can find out all about everything about the Mastermind series under the Resources tab and learn more about your donors while you're there. Now, with that, I want to encourage you to use two things that are right here in the world of Zoom, which you probably know already, but I'm going to encourage you to use them anyway. One is the chat function. And we'll start right there, right now, by just asking if you would mind to just say hello in the chat. That's a really great gift to our presenter, so she'll know that you're here. It'd be a kind thing to do. And you can do that once again, right at the bottom of the page. And thank you, Sarah, for starting us up. I appreciate that. And then also we have the Q&A, which of course is for your questions. Please do put your questions there. I'm afraid that I might miss them if they all end up in chat. So please do use both of those things, one to talk, the other one to pose those questions we can answer, and it will store all those up. And then we'll make sure to share those with our presenter at the conclusion of our presentation. And as you probably know, this is for CFRE credit today. So if you're gathering those up, along with the other ones you can get in this series, that's exactly why we want to give maximum space and time for Sarah Sebastian to give us a bit of instruction on this really important topic involving, of course, marketing tips to bridge the generational divide on events, which are so important to us throughout the year, but particularly this time of year. And Sarah, you have been, of course, in the sector for almost a decade, working now as Director of Corporate Communications at One Cause. And I know you can tell us a bit more about that as we jump in, but I want to thank you so much for taking time to share with us today.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to share some research and tips with all of you. Let me go ahead and start sharing my screen. Let me struggle through my share buttons. And we should be set. Could everybody give me a little note in the chat to let me know if you can see slides? All right. Well, thank you, Jay, for the nice introduction. We're going to get started talking about fundraising event marketing tips to bridge the generational divide today. As Jay mentioned, I have been in the fundraising tech sector for almost 8 years now. I joined One Cause in April. Previously, I worked for QGive, if anyone has heard of QGive. Outside of work, I am on the fundraising committee for Florida Access Network here in Central Florida, where I live. And your bonus fact and mood booster for the day is that I'm known for frequently wandering into the woods to take pictures of birds. And that's a Florida scrub jay on my head in this image. And this has been your ornithology lesson for the day. So before we get started, I want to take just a quick look at the agenda so you know what to expect during today's presentation. I promise I won't spring any more bird pictures on you, maybe. First, we're going to talk about why it's important to understand generational giving patterns and preferences. If you're anything like me, you want to know the why behind something when you're told it's important or you're asked to do something. We'll then dive into lots of great data from the 2022 Giving Experience study that I completed earlier this year to explore generational differences and some similarities in giving and participation patterns around events and social giving. I'm going to weave in some tips and action items throughout, and then we're going to wrap up with some final thoughts and time for Q&A. And I warn you now, I will say the word data a lot, so please be prepared and don't judge me for that. So why does understanding generational differences in giving patterns and preferences matter? I'm going to take a look at that. According to Giving USA, The total giving market in 2021 was $485 billion, and individual donors like you, like me, gave more than ever, and they gave $327 billion. So thinking about that, does applying one blanket marketing strategy to all of those individual donors make sense? Of course not. So to make the most of the piece of pie that is individual giving, you've got to learn about your audience makeup so you can market and communicate accordingly. Not only is this going to attract more donors, it's going to significantly help your retention efforts. Donor retention is an ever-present challenge for nonprofits, and those average donor retention rates tend to hover in the low to mid 40% range, with the Fundraising Effectiveness Project reporting a rate of 42% in 2021. When you appeal to donors' preferences, they're more likely to give again. And with every gift that a donor does make, those retention rates go up. This graphic on the screen looks a little confusing at first, but it does show data through Q1 of this year, and looks at donors' giving history over the years. So those first-time donors, they only had a 6.9% retention rate. But then look at how much that goes up across the board with each additional gift, all the way up to over 84% retention with folks who've made 7+ donations over the years. So giving donors what they want means you'll spend less money on acquisition and you'll retain more of that revenue. And you're also going to broaden your donor base by appealing to donors of all ages with different event types and through different communication channels. All right, I have to give you some background so you know we did a legit job with the research before we dive in. There was a survey that went into the Giving Experience study. The sample size was over 1,000 social donors, and I kind of want to touch on that definition a little bit just to be clear. Social donors are defined as anyone who has donated to or attended a fundraising event, sponsored someone, or participated in a fundraising run, walk, or ride, or donated or requested donations as part of a fundraising challenge or an occasion like a birthday or memorial or a giving day. Donors who took this survey made a donation in one of those categories in the 12 months before the survey went live. So for our surveys, we do work with Edge Research. They're based in DC. They're a trusted research firm that also works with nonprofits like the Human Rights Campaign and Meals on Wheels. And we work with them to ensure our survey pool meets census representation quotas. So we're getting representation from various groups, all ages, regions, races, and income levels. So we can be confident that presenting this data as an accurate representation of the larger population. This year's survey was in the field in May of this year. So you're getting some nice, fresh, relevant data that you can use right away. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just jump straight into the numbers. So now that you're sure what a social donor is, you'll be happy to know that more US adults are becoming social donors every year. In this year's study, approximately 29%, or 1 in 3 US adults surveyed, self-identified as a social donor. And that's continuing an upward trend in social giving. It was at 23% when we did the study in 2018. And 27% in 2021. So it's up 6 points overall since 2018. And that's really good news that we're seeing that growth as the nonprofit world moves toward recovery, kind of emerging from the pandemic. People are craving those social giving experience and events. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at how donors participated in social giving overall by breaking down where their donations went. You might be looking at this kind of suspiciously and saying, that adds up to way more than 100%, but we did ask them to indicate all of the ways they participated in social giving in the 12 months before the survey, which could have been by giving to or participating in one, two, or all of the social giving opportunities that you see here. So in the 12 months before the survey, 39% of donors surveyed said they participated in or donated to run, walk, ride campaigns, and that includes both virtual and in-person. The spread of participation across types of social giving was almost identical to what it was in 2021. There wasn't really a significant rise or drop in any of those categories. And in the 2021 study, we did see a diversification of social giving opportunities by nonprofits. You all responded to changing needs and really just kind of mixed it up. You changed those fundraising options, one outside of the traditional event fundraising options. In 2021, there was a big rise in occasion and giving days and challenges, but in 2022, that participation kind of stayed the same there. I want to look at that by generation. This is kind of interesting here. So take a look at the giving days category. Younger generations have shown a lot of interest in giving days, with 44% of Gen Z and 43% of Gen Y saying they participated in a giving day like Giving Tuesday in the 12 months before the survey. Gen X seems to prefer occasions like birthday fundraising, you think about that DIY fundraising, and then runs, walks, and rides are in a close second there for Gen X. So look over here at Boomers under runs, walks, and rides, and they show up as the top participants there. And I thought about this when we got the data back. I was like, what's going on here? Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that there aren't grandparents out there running 5Ks, because I know there absolutely are. But remember that this also includes people who donated to support someone in a run, walk, or ride. And I like to call those folks the donate, don't participate crowd. And my 96-year-old grandmother, my parents, my aunts, my uncles, they were all part of that crowd in the last 5K that I participated in. Each and every one of them supported me. They donated to my goal, but they definitely did not put on their running shoes. If you look over here in the events category, things like galas, the auctions, they do have a pretty strong showing there, which makes sense. All right. So there's a lot kind of going on here on this summary slide. I want to break it down a little bit for you. Millennials here continue to give higher average social giving donations compared to other generations, and their average social giving donation amount actually went up $7 in this past study. So they're giving more, they're going to more of those events, giving more money. And other generations actually saw a slight drop of about $30 or more in their annual social donations. In the 2021 study, we actually dubbed millennials the caretakers of the pandemic because of their high social donations and annual donation totals. So even with a little bit of a drop, they remain the strongest social givers, and their annual donation amount is second only to boomers and matures. As far as the types of organizations with social giving, social service organizations were the top recipient of donations across generations in 2022, except for the boomers and matures. There was a bit of a change there. In 2021, health-related orgs topped the list of nonprofit types for boomers, matures, and Gen X, and children's charities were a favorite for millennials. And something to note, this year, Gen Z reported a drop in giving related to an immediate need. In the 12 months leading up to the survey, 2021 survey, many of those young donors had given in response to social justice campaigns, in response to Black Lives Matter, which brought human rights organizations to the top of their list that year. In this year's survey, social giving to human rights orgs by Gen Z dropped 13 points. I'm really interested to see the next study. There's a lot going on in the political atmosphere, the economy right now. I want to see if they kind of respond to those immediate needs and if that giving kind of goes back up again. So keep an eye on that, especially if that's your mission area. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how people heard about this. And of course, social giving is driven by social connections. So let's take a look at where donors heard about their last social giving or event giving opportunity. So looking just at 2022, it's clear that social networks are still important, with 54% of donors of all ages saying they heard about an opportunity through a friend, a family member, or a colleague. Outreach directly from an organization, advertising, and hearing about opportunities through work were all pretty close, falling in the 20 to 24% range. And this is the second year we tracked celebrities or influencers as one way donors heard about donations, and 12% said that that's how they heard about a social giving opportunity, the same as in 2021. Okay, let's take a look back at what changed. It's helpful to see kind of where things were here. Oops, sorry. First, before we move on, I do have a question for you, and I'm going to ask Jay for a little help in the chat. If everyone out there could kind of think about your organization's budget, how did you budget for digital advertising in 2022 compared to 2021? And that can include display ads, paid social advertising, paid search. And it's totally okay to say if you're unsure. So just take a couple minutes to type in the chat and
I'll keep watching.
Great, sure. If anybody says they budgeted more, did you budget less? Did you budget about the same for your advertising?
Let me see, we have people saying they're not sure.
Not sure.
About the same, but mostly right now saying they're not sure.
Okay. All right, well, let's take a look at why I asked that. All right. There's a lot going on here too. If we were playing a game of spot the 2018 data over there on the left, I think we'd have quite a few winners. So to start, I kind of want to take a look at those social networks again. At donors hearing about giving opportunities through friends, family members, and colleagues, that remained pretty stable this year compared to 2021. And that sharp dip that you see from 68% was picked up in other areas. So hearing about an opportunity in the workplace is up slightly from 2021. And I'm eager to see how much this grows as more people return to the office. So looking at these other categories, people reporting that they heard about an opportunity directly from an organization has gone up 6 points since 2018. And advertising, that lovely digital advertising we just asked about, it's slightly down this year from 2021, but it's seen 8 points of growth since 2018. Those areas rose in 2021 because fundraisers were doing what they had to do. So when donors' social networks were cut off, you stepped up and started that direct outreach through multiple channels. You embraced digital platforms and started to see returns on the digital advertising funding. At least I hope so. The additional work on the part of nonprofits could now mean that even as we're kind of returning to those in-person events, people might still hear about these social giving opportunities directly from an organization or in an advertisement before the traditional, friend or family member can get to them to tell them about it. But that's not a bad thing. The more people hear about an opportunity, the stickier it becomes. So using all of those channels, it's brand awareness. It's kind of like real life example. It's like me setting 3 alarms on my phone, leaving a Post-it note on my mirror, reminding me to buy coffee creamer. Sometimes I'm still going to forget it, but the likelihood of me taking action or remembering to do this is a lot higher when I'm seeing it in all of these multiple places. So as donors are starting to return to those in-person settings, outreach and advertising can continue to signal boost all of your campaigns. Okay, I broke that out by generation here, how they heard about it. Across the board, hearing about an event or social giving opportunity from a friend, family member, or colleague is number one, no surprise there. There's a relatively close split across Gen Z, Millennials, and Gen X when it comes to hearing about an opportunity through work. And when it comes to outreach, boomers and matures clock in at 16% here. But take note, it was the number 2 way that they did hear about an event or a social giving opportunity after their networks there. So that direct outreach is working well with that generation. And then it seems that my generation, the millennials, are most likely out of all of the generations to hear about a social giving opportunity through advertising. But we also seem to pay more attention to celebrities and influencers. I don't personally relate to that one, but apparently that's my generation's thing. I'm kind of interested to see if the lower results here for Gen Z in this category reflect that nonprofits are kind of still learning the ropes of platforms like TikTok, where that generation spends a lot of their time. I've seen a lot of great content, a lot of people really starting to focus on TikTok. Okay. You've seen a chunk of numbers. I'm going to take a look at our first set of tips on how to use that data. I said data, I warned you. All right, so let's start with kind of how you can spread the word. We saw that hearing about social giving opportunities from personal networks was important to every generation. So you've got to make those events and social giving opportunities easy to share. And I know that people tell you that all the time, and then they don't show you how to do it. I've heard a lot of people say, provide those toolkits for people who are participating in these social giving opportunities and events filled with images, social post language, video links, and other resources that make sharing a social giving opportunity easy. And that's key for people participating in these campaigns. Anything where they want to reach out online and appeal to other folks or talk about your organization in person. And I have an example, actually, that I used in a recent campaign, and we'll kind of call it Eating What We Cook. We finished up a social giving campaign at our company in July. It was called Indie Tech Gives. Every year, tech companies in the Indianapolis area compete to raise money for a nonprofit of their choice. So to make it easier for staff to share their involvement in that campaign and appeal to their friends and family for donations, our nonprofit, which was Make-A-Wish Foundation, sent over a great collection of images, video links, impact statements, and some history about the organization. We put that together in a resource library and made it publicly available for everybody. And I can tell you that I saw those images and videos all over the place in social media. Everybody's feed was filled with these wonderful posts with these great images that they had sent to us. I've included the full toolkit here. I'm just going to click through it very quickly so you can see a live example of what that looks like, and you'll get it in the deck after. So the first couple of slides in their toolkit, they're talking points that supporters and event participants can use in their fundraising to get the word out about the mission, about the event. So Make-A-Wish sent over their mission statement, a bit of history, some research about why wishes matter, those wishes for ill children. There's some great information about wish types. They gave us some good impact information here as well. And they provided a collection of these inspiring images of wish recipients of all ages. There's some really cute ones in here. And they included infographics with more impact information. Sharing impact is so incredibly important. You hear that all the time. Plus, they sent an impressive collection of YouTube videos showing wishes being granted. And if you do explore these after the webinar, I will warn you, have a tissue ready because you are guaranteed to be cutting onions while you're watching the videos. So as you can see, they did make it really easy for us to share information about their mission and appeal to our networks with engaging imagery and videos. And as a company, we wound up raising over $20,000 during that campaign. So it was super helpful to have those things to share out with our networks. Okay. I want to touch on those who heard about social giving opportunities through work, and I've got the stats here along the bottom broken out by generation. We spend a lot of our lives at work, so it makes sense that people would hear about giving opportunities from people they're around for 8+ hours a day. So partnering with those local companies to promote events to employees is a really good way to market your events. Corporate social responsibility has become huge. I don't want to say a buzzword, but people really are focusing on those efforts at their companies. And companies are always looking for ways beyond just those standard volunteer opportunities to engage their employees and give back to communities. So one creative way, even the campaign that we just did, you could consider contacting multiple companies in your area, setting up a fundraising competition to see which company can raise the most for your nonprofit, and really take advantage of those corporate partnerships where possible, especially if you have companies in town that are like, friendly rivals. And I don't know if anyone here has seen the tweets and the photos of like Wendy's and McDonald's signs as they're going back and forth as rivals. That's what I picture happening here. Okay, continuing with spreading the word, I want to touch on advertising, which we talked about a little bit earlier. So that 40-ish and under crowd that was most likely to hear about an event or opportunity through advertising compared to older generations. These folks grew up in a digital world for the most part. So if you're using digital ads, make sure that you're using language and imagery that's going to appeal to that age group, any age group that you're targeting really. And by this, I don't mean look up memes and use that language. Memes have a shelf life of approximately 0.03 seconds and will be outdated by the time you use them in your marketing. I've seen it done well, and I'm sure that all of you have seen some real misses too. If you're marketing to younger people, try using younger people in your images. This example on the screen is from the Mississippi Children's Museum, and they hold a huge annual event called Neon Night at the museum. And they market it specifically to a younger crowd, as you can see here. I just pulled up 3 of the first images I found, and they have a ton. They did a really great job with their marketing. It sounds like something really simple, but when done right, it does a really good job. Just take a look at that language, take a look at the imagery, and don't try to force language that you think works for a generation. Have someone read it and tell you, like, I would never say this. And a little pro tip I noticed recently, probably because grew up around the 90s, appealing to nostalgia right now, especially with Gen X and millennials. They're kind of going through an, oh my God, the 90s are cool again thing right now. I've seen outfits I owned in high school being worn by people at least 20 years younger than I am, and I fully regret not saving all of my clothes because I would be very wealthy right now if I resold them, but I digress. I found a couple of really great examples of some one-cause customers appealing to the 90s nostalgia while advertising for their events. And this one definitely worked on me. I don't know about you guys. If you're kind of leaning in to see what's in that picture, I spent far too long staring at this going, oh my gosh, I forgot about that. So take advantage of this trend while it lasts before everyone does it. It's going to get played out for sure, but people are definitely paying attention to the 90s, and that whole nostalgia effect is really working. And if you're in the mood to try something a little unique, a coworker shared this very cool digital billboard platform called Blip. It's affordable. You can choose locations in high traffic areas all across the country, and it's just a unique way to get your event kind of up in the lights. They have a calculator on their site to show you how many blips or appearances your ad is going to have on this digital billboard based on a daily budget. So you can see it's super affordable here. A daily budget of $10 gets you 263 displays in a day. And yes, they do offer a Times Square blip. So there are some seriously high traffic areas where you can do this for pretty few dollars. All right, time for some more data. I want to take a look at average social donation amounts here and what's important to donors. So first, take a look at the average social giving donation amount. And again, that's to these types of events, anything where you reach out to networks. You can start to see kind of a return to pre-pandemic levels after this bump here to $220 in 2021. And how did people make those donations? So channel-wise, we're going to see a return to pre-pandemic levels in some areas. So for in-person, things are slowly headed back to where they were, closer into the 2018 levels. Let's see, giving in person, it's still short of 2018 levels of 55%. For website donations here, those seem to be heading back the same way to pre-pandemic levels, but I do want to look at some growth areas as well. So take a look at mobile donations here. There was this huge spike from 2018 to 2021, 8% to 23%. And then instead of a drop, there was more growth from 23 to 26%. And here in text donations, while there wasn't any growth, it did hold steady after increasing 8 points from 2018 to 2021. This kind of speaks to our findings over the years that donors really want options when it comes to how, when, and where they give. Being able to quickly and easily access those social giving opportunities on mobile devices became a more regular part of life during the pandemic. I don't know about you guys, my face was in my phone way too much. It's gotten better. And the data shows that donors are going to continue to utilize those channels. So we'll take a peek in just a minute at some more. I want to break that out by generation as well, so you can see who's using what device, where are they going. Boomers and matures mostly supported events and social giving opportunities in person or on the web. So make sure you're including like a web address in your direct mailing or even a QR code, and we'll touch on QR codes later. They're a great tool. They've really made a comeback. It shouldn't be a surprise by now that mobile donations are popular. Folks like to give when, where, and how they want. And for millennials and Gen X, you can see kind of in the center here that they're the generations most likely to use social media to make their social giving donations. And then under mail here, younger generations are kind of showing their preferences. And this kind of included any kind of mail here too, so email as well. And we're going to kind of break that down out later in the marketing aspect with some fun facts. And with text messages here, you can see the percentage go up as age goes down. All right, payment type, digging a little bit deeper, broken out by generation. So to make their last social donation, credit cards, debit cards have kind of become the standard, as you can see right here. There are quite a few folks giving with cash as well. But then take a look at the digital payment and wallet app row here. 40% of Gen Z, 42% of millennials, and 32% of Gen X reported they use something like PayPal, Venmo, or Apple Pay to donate. So if you're offering those options, make sure that you're including them somewhere in your marketing or display them on your registration or event homepage or donation form. I know even for me personally, I'm less likely to donate to something if a digital wallet option isn't available sometimes. It does affect my decision to give. We did ask about cryptocurrency as well. And out of all generations, millennials are the most likely to donate using crypto. And there's some great tools out there to make this easy now, like the Giving Block. I recently heard their CEO speak at a conference, and he touched on the marketing piece of this. You have to let donors know you offer it. He sees a lot of nonprofits putting it up on their site, but then not getting the word out. It's not a build it and they will come situation. You have to make sure you include it in those marketing opportunities too. Okay. I want to take a look at donor activity levels here. And this looks like a super simple slide. It's one of my favorites. There's a lot of great insight here for events and social giving. For first-time donors, this is telling us that 26% of those surveyed had never given to the organization they made their last social donation to. And this 27% of active donors here had previously donated to an organization in the 12 months before the survey. Lapsed donors hadn't given to the org, to the last organization in a year or more. And we know that social fundraising, of course, is great for attracting new donors with exciting events and giving opportunities. It's a wonderful way for loyal supporters to fundraise on your behalf, but it's becoming increasingly evident that it's a really effective way to get those lapsed donors giving again. In this year's study, a whopping 43% of donors said it had been a year or more since they had given to that organization. And that's huge. There were some donors that reported it had been over 5 years, and there was even like a few that reported over 10 years. That's just wild to me. And guess what? In last year's survey, this number of lapsed had actually gone up. So more lapsed donors reported giving again in this year's. It grew 5 points from 2021. So there's a ton of opportunity here. So look in your database at those lapsed donors, start targeting them with social giving campaigns, invite them to your events, thank them for any past participation. And when it comes to active donors and first-time donors here, whether it's your donation appeals or you're inviting them to events, take a look at your language. First-time donors don't have the same background or familiarity as your existing donors. They need a bit more mission connection, those impact statements and inspiration to kind of capture their attention, their registrations, their donations. So see if there are any adjustments you can make to draw first-time donors in with the why of your organization. They need a little bit more of it. So broken out by generation here with the lapsed, new and lapsed donors, I really want to focus on the lapsed area here. For boomers and matures, there's some impressive stats across this row. Half of boomers here who were lapsed said it had been 1 to 2 years since they had given. And a pretty big chunk of lapsed donors said it had been 2 to 5 years. And there we go with the 5 to 10 years. And then that little tiny bit down here, it had been 10 plus years since people had given to an organization. So consider thanking those donors for that past support, invite them to that next event. The social giving opportunities have proven to be an effective way to bring donors of all ages kind of back into the fold. All right, so I want to dig into where folks heard about their social giving opportunities. Which channels did they hear them through? Where did they hear about that last event? This year, the top 4 channels through which donors learned about their last social giving opportunity event, they were social media, in-person, email, and a nonprofit's website. And with social media being a top channel, you've got a lot of options. Not only posting and engaging with folks about social giving, but also investing in that paid advertising that we talked about before. Okay, and just a quick breakdown from the past, looking at any changes and where those top 4 channels were. And broken down by generation, so we can see where the differences are. It's pretty clear that social media is going to be a great place to invest in marketing and engagement for your social giving opportunities. And don't worry, I will talk about platforms in just a moment, specific ones. A lot of people found out about giving opportunities and events in person. Remember those talking points we saw earlier from Make-A-Wish? Those come in super handy if people are chatting about your nonprofit. So make those available so people do know what to say. All right, platforms. Here's a quick look. Where does each generation hang out? Millennials are most likely to hear about a social giving or event opportunity on Facebook. And older generations lean heavily on Facebook. And for boomers and matures that took the survey, those who heard about a social giving opportunity on social media, heard about it on Facebook. That was it. Gen Z favored Instagram, and they were most likely out of all generations to hear about an opportunity on TikTok. Keep in mind that we didn't survey folks under the age of 18 due to legal permissions, so this may be even higher with younger folks factored in. And YouTube also makes an appearance here with the younger crowd. And I've got kind of a fun fact for you. This is from a recent article in the New York Times. Gen Z has started using TikTok as a search engine. And Google's senior vice president said in their studies, something like almost 40% of young people, when they're looking for a place for lunch, they don't go to Google Maps or search, they go to TikTok or even to Instagram. And there was a Gen Z user that said TikTok's results don't seem as biased as Google's. adding that she often wants a different opinion from what ads and websites optimized for Google say. So this ties into something that we're about to touch on, which is trust. We'll get to that in a moment. So think about how you can use TikTok. There are a lot of people starting to talk about it. It's been on the radar for a while. Imagine someone going on TikTok searching for, let's say, how can I help homeless people in my community? And you're having an event to benefit the homeless in your community. With the right tags, you could show up in those search results to get the word out about an event or a campaign that you're hosting. So there's some interesting ways that you can utilize this platform. All right, another bit of fun data. I will be asking for a little bit of participation. It involves the age-old battle of direct mail versus email. Some people love direct mail, some people hate it. Direct mail is obviously a little bit different for events and social giving, since you're not sending out that kind of standard appeal letter. But there's definitely something here. So across social donors of all generations, 24% of social donors heard about a giving opportunity through email, and 9% heard about an opportunity through direct mail, postcard, letter, invitation, in the good old-fashioned mailbox. So put on your guessing hats. And in the chat, I'd love to see you send in your best guess on this. So of those donors who heard about a social giving opportunity or event through direct mail, what percentage do you think were millennials? So just send in a guess, a percentage, 0%, 100%, whatever. And if Jay could read back a couple of guesses, that would be great.
Sure. Let me see. So, wow, what a range. So I have to give some attributions here. Desiree came in boldly with 82%. Then Shannon said 10%.
Okay.
April said 5%. Jeb said 35%. Kelly 23%. Emily 50%. This is quite a range.
This is a range. This audience is very different from every audience I've asked this question. I usually get like 1%, 0%, nothing. I've never gotten anything high. So there's some people in here that might have some knowledge about this. So thanks for playing along. Here's the reality. So out of that group, 13% of millennials heard about a social giving opportunity through direct mail. And that's higher than any other generation. And most folks typically think of direct mail as being more effective with the older generations. And I can honestly relate to this being a little bit higher. I love it when I get something interesting in the mail. I am a millennial. I've said it once. Sorry, I keep saying it. A few years ago, like a local arts organization sent out these beautiful handmade invitations to a social giving event. And I had it on my refrigerator for months. I couldn't go to the event, but I wound up going online and donating the amount of the event ticket. If I had received that invitation in my email, I probably would have deleted it. My inbox is flooded with emails from all kinds of nonprofits, retail emails, sales. It's kind of overwhelming, but that invitation that I got in the mail was special. And I realize it isn't something you might be able to do often due to cost, but it may be worth trying for special occasions, especially with that 40 and under crowd who are so used to this kind of constant stream of emails and digital noise coming at them. It really kind of stands out from the crowd. All right. Let's talk a little bit about giving motivators. And this is in response to the question, thinking about the last time you donated through social fundraising, how well do each of the following describe why you donated? And we're looking at the percentage who reported this as describing them perfectly. In 2018 and 2021, the first 2 years of this study, the top 3 giving motivators were the same: ease, mission, impact. People gave because it was easy to do, they cared about the mission, or they knew the money raised was going to make a difference. In 2022, things changed. There are multiple new rising motivators, but the top motivator we found in 2022 was trust. And 59% of donors gave because they trusted the organization to do the right thing. We also saw personal connection move into the top 3. 58% said they gave because they cared about the person who asked them to donate as opposed to the organization. Ease was number 3 at 58%, and the top 10 motivators contained multiple responses focusing on impact. So instead of kind of narrowing our focus across these factors that were so closely related to each other, we decided to view these motivators as more of a generosity ecosystem. So building that easy, frictionless giving process, creating this diverse community of connected donors, effectively sharing your organization's mission, and consistently conveying impact are all part of creating that ultimate generosity motivator, trust. And if any of those pieces kind of crumble, that trust starts to erode. So it's all really important. And we've talked about this on our team. We've heard from nonprofits too. Trust was probably always there, of course, but it's come to the forefront as a result of the pandemic and just factors that are going on right now. People are feeling pretty unsure about a lot of things. And especially when it comes to parting with money in a time of economic uncertainty, donors are looking to nonprofits for reassurance that donations are being put to good use and that organizations are acting with integrity. And kind of broken out by generation here, you can see some similarities highlighted. Every generation indicated trust and immediacy as one of their top 5 generosity motivators. Ease, mission, and impact are sprinkled throughout as well. And you can see that personal connection makes an appearance at the top of the chart here for Gen Z and millennials. So these events and social giving opportunities are really great for them to get that personal connection that they're kind of craving. So what do you do with all of that? I promised we'd talk about QR codes, and here we are. So remember, immediacy, it's important to every generation. And QR codes, really, they were the comeback kid of the pandemic. I started seeing them everywhere. I'm sure you did too. It was forecast that 1 billion smartphones would access QR codes by this year. And 83% of people used a QR code to make a payment for the first time ever during the pandemic. And 59% believe that QR codes are here to stay on your mobile phone interactions. So how can you use them? You can use these QR codes to gauge interest in your event by tracking the number of times a code is scanned and the subsequent conversion rate. So if you're putting these on your marketing pieces, it's a valuable source of information that's going to inform real-time kind of advertising revisions that you can implement to kind of boost that engagement. I've included an example of a QR code that we used for the research study. As a matter of fact, this is kind of an older QR code. I don't know what the number is now. I should check, but it's out there in the wild. It's getting scanned. If you're creating print materials, be sure to plan for the aesthetic inclusion of this QR code and a call to action such as scan for details. Direct visitors to your social media page. They can learn more about your event while also increasing your online following. You could link it to a video and kind of surprise people with someone sharing information about your event. I'm picturing in my head, they're not going to expect someone to just kind of pop up when they scan a QR code and be like, oh, hi, I see you've scanned our QR code, and then talk about this event and make a personal invitation. It might go without saying, but because QR codes are often engaged on smartphones, you have to make sure that that directed URL is optimized for mobile viewing. Nothing's going to turn a potential user away faster than a poorly formatted and dysfunctional site. I did include this image here as well. I don't know if anyone has noticed this, but Google Chrome also has a QR code generator right in their toolbar. It doesn't have the same tracking abilities or tools like a QR code generator, which is what we use at One Cause, but it still makes it easier and more immediate for your supporters to have that QR code to scan to get to your registration page, to your donation form, wherever you want to put it. Okay, so I want to look at some easy ways to build trust into your marketing too, since we just talked about that. And one way to do this is pretty straightforward. And add those trust indicators from sites like Charity Navigator and Charity Watchdog to your event registration page or your event homepage, and even on those direct mail pieces. And remember that a lot of people are coming to your event homepage first. If it's been shared by a friend, they're not going to navigate away to your website most likely. So stick them somewhere that's not, in your face with the trust indicators, but they'll still come across it as they're landing on your event site to register. While you're reaching out about an upcoming event, be sure to include impact information, especially if you have specific information from a past event. Showing people that impact the funds raised during that past event had on those you serve is a good way to build trust and engage those potential registrants and donors. You can also include testimonials, not just from those you served, but from past participants in your event if you have an annual event. Hearing about the way an event made people feel is a powerful way to get people to attend. And a small item to add for a personal touch, again, it sounds small, but it makes a difference. Add a real person as the event contact for those frequently asked questions. It sounds minor, but it's a tactic often used in email marketing. You've probably seen emails from someone's name at company instead of info at company. It's reassuring to know that someone is there, they're available to respond to me, even if it's just kind of a psychological trick. Seeing someone's name makes me feel better that there's someone sitting on the other end ready to answer a question. So before we kind of start wrapping up here, I do want to touch on the inevitable, virtual versus in-person, with a little bit of talk about the pandemic here. This slide shows how people of all ages participated in the last fundraising event before they took the survey. Most reported that they participated in person across all generations, but don't dismiss those virtual options just yet. Taking a deeper look at comfort levels with returning to in-person events. 50% of donors of all ages are comfortable returning. 35% said they were somewhat comfortable, and that leaves 13% saying they're not comfortable returning, and 2% they weren't really sure how to feel about things. So we've got 50% of donors, they're somewhat comfortable, not comfortable or unsure about returning to those in-person events. That's half of those donors. So it's important to keep the virtual options on your calendar somewhere. And breaking it out by generation to take a peek, you can see that those comfort levels really do kind of increase as age decreases, with most of the younger generations being the most comfortable returning to those in-person events. This looks a little crazy. I will explain. This is what surveyed social donors had to say about virtual options across different social giving and event types. So these blue bars, those are event social donors. Think about like people attending galas, for example. The yellow bar is runs, walks, rides, and teal is for the occasion and giving days. So social donors of all kinds here really wanted a mix of in-person and virtual options. If you look at event donors, they seemed to be like they were the most ready right here to return to in-person events, with 38% surveyed saying they want only or mostly in-person engagement. But that still leaves over 50% of your event social donors looking for virtual options of some sort. Not all the time, some want all the time, but there's a good mix in there. So there are donors telling you that they want virtual options. So it's important to kind of look at your calendar, provide them. We've heard from a lot of nonprofits, and I don't know if anyone in the audience has had the same experience. They're struggling with in-person attendance. They want to know how they can get people excited about coming back. Yes, drum up excitement, keep those efforts going. It's important, but remember this slide. They're telling you what they want, and it's not going to return to normal overnight. I know it feels like it's been forever, but it's still kind of a slow burn. So offering up that mix of in-person and virtual options is the way to go. And if you're unsure, survey your donors to find out who is going to come to those in-person pieces so you can find where it's a good fit to your event to add virtual options or not. I also want to touch on what makes donors comfortable coming back to those in-person events here by generation. So getting them excited about returning is important, but making them feel comfortable. And that's part of that top motivator we talked about again, trust. So taking a look at the chart, you can kind of see that Gen Z wants to see proof of vaccination for attendees, proof of negative COVID tests, and for attendees to have their temperature taken on arrival. Millennials shared that vaccination and test sentiment as well. And what we found interesting here, younger donors prefer that proof of vaccination, and older donors preferred events held outdoors. I know we're kind of heading into those colder months in most of the nation, not here in Florida. It's a nice sweaty day. So no matter what you believe, we don't know what's going to happen if there will be a surge. There are a lot of things going on right now where we're kind of uncertain about different viruses popping up too, RSV, various other things. So take a look, keep an eye on it. Do we need to slide those virtual options back in to make up for those donors who want those events held outdoors? We still want to have them come to events and be included. Someone recently shared a conversation where they said they thought younger donors were ready to go back in person without any restrictions, but the data is kind of telling us the opposite here. And older donors don't seem quite as concerned about that proof of vaccination as long as something is held outdoors. So that virtual piece is going to be important for them. As you're planning your in-person events, just think about your audience demographics. What's going to make them feel comfortable coming back to your events? So how do you do that? You've got to know your audience makeup and plan those options accordingly. So as you're putting that marketing together, include and highlight some perks for each audience. If you're also including virtual, they want to feel engaged and special too. And remember that it may not just be someone who lives far away. Your virtual audience very well could have folks who lack the ability to get to your event due to physical limitations or immune disorders. So be sure to include them. That inclusive piece is very important. Also, highlight those safety protocols in your marketing if you know you've got folks in your audience who might be uncomfortable and they're just looking for that little nudge over the line to get to your event. It can make all the difference, builds trust. You're showing you care about your donors' health and about their safety, not just about their potential to give. And finally, we're back to where we started with retention. This stat here, 70% of social and event donors said they are somewhat likely or very likely to become regular annual donors. So those people, those are the people coming to your runs, your walks, your rides, whether online or in person. They're participating in any giving days you might be putting on. That's a lot of people. And what impacts that likelihood that they're going to give or participate again? So right here along the right side of the graphic, the answers range from impact, ease, connection, and even fun down here at the bottom. We've touched on most of this throughout the presentation, but remember to include some of this in your follow-up communications too. Tell participants and supporters how they helped. Consider making some of them event ambassadors to form connections with new supporters, and include that storytelling, those testimonials, and even a video recap showing the fun people had at your event. Share the impact, because 70% of people said they are, somewhat likely or very likely to become regular donors. So they are primed to become those repeat donors with your organization. Okay, we have gone through a lot of data. We've talked about some tips on how to market those events. So if there are any questions that kind of came through in Q&A, I'd love to hear some of those. And if I don't know an answer, I will find out for you.
Okay, well, while you're taking a sip, which is
Thank
really
you.
well earned, I'll go ahead and share the questions that we have right now. If there's anyone here who has to hop at some point, as Sarah addresses your questions, do know that there will be a recording of this session, if that's okay with you, Sarah, posted to the DonorSearch site and on YouTube. So if you want a copy of that or you want to share this with your colleagues, and I really hope you will, I don't know how you feel there where you're sitting, but I think this data is really important to dispelling a lot of assumptions that people make about what to do, how to do it, and with whom. And this is real information that we can really use to help our donors engage with us in a way that's appropriate for them. So anyway, you can get a copy of the study, and we'll probably talk about that in a minute. I even captured it with a QR code myself, and I'm sure we can go back to that if it's helpful for you. But a copy of this recording will once again be over at DonorSearch, probably by tomorrow, under the resources tab. That's at donorsearch.net. And also there will be a link to the YouTube recording. Now, questions. So if you have a question, go ahead and put it in Q&A. We're going to handle these sequentially as they came in. The first one from Anonymous. Whenever I see Anonymous, it always worries me. I wonder what they're going to say. So here we go. Hi, it reads, "Hi, Sarah. I'm very interested to know if the percentage of people who learned about giving opportunities at work increased a lot during the 100% remote working period through 2020 through most of 2021. I would have expected that to have decreased with less interpersonal interactions among colleagues during that period."
Mm-hmm. I'll have to look back at the exact dates on like the 2018, 2021 studies. There was, I believe, a little bit of a drop, but then it started coming back. I have to go back and look at the numbers. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but I am very interested in this upcoming study to see if there's like a really big increase. We will do this again. So I'm really curious, just the number of people going back to the office to see if they do start hearing about that. And especially as people start really focusing on those corporate social responsibility efforts. I can't seem to turn anywhere without seeing a new article about CSR somewhere. So I think that's probably really going to jump up in the next year.
The next one came in from Rosemary, who said, "Thank you, first of all, for your great detailed presentation. Have you been able to track increased interest from diverse individuals?" Now, she doesn't define that, but I know there are different ways of doing it, and you're obviously a specialist in this. But she asked if you've been able to track that, and have organizations been including photos of more diverse groups, no matter what age range that they are targeting, in their digital advertising, as well as more traditional advertising?
Yes. As far as reaching more diverse audiences and younger audiences, yes, there are stats in the study. I think in this year's study over last year, there was a 5-point increase in the number of Black donors taking advantage of social giving opportunities and events. There was a little bit of a drop in Hispanic donors. from the 2021 study. I'm just trying to remember off the top of my head, sorry guys, but it is in that study there. And I do have some additional numbers within there that I can share out. And I believe Black donors, Hispanic donors, both of those groups reported giving to more organizations than they had previously in the previous year. And they also reported giving more money. So that virtual option that's added into the mix for everyone, that really gave that reach to communities that had been underrepresented, even excluded from philanthropy and generosity in the past. They have this access now. Don't pull it back. You're reaching these audiences that want to give, that are incredibly generous. So keep it up. And I have seen, personal experience at least, a lot more organizations doing a pretty good job of including diversity in their imagery. And not just, just ethnicities, I'm talking disabilities too. I've seen some really great photos, and there are even people working neurodiversity into their marketing too, which is really important to think about as well. Vulnerable moment, I'm autistic. So when I see neurodiversity in advertising, I'm like, I'm going to support this organization. I'm going to go to this event. So it really does make a difference having that inclusive marketing. That representation is super important. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah. We could spend a whole hour,
Yeah.
probably a whole day talking about that issue, especially because as you looked at the cohorts, the younger they are, at least what I understand of the census data, the younger they are, the more diverse they are as a community and within each individual household and each individual. So that's why I said diverse individuals can mean different things to different people. And one of them is the other box in the census form, multi-ethnicity, which is part of, how some people define themselves. It doesn't fit neatly into the way we tend to ask these questions, and it definitely informs people's experience with philanthropy. So it's really interesting stuff that you're uncovering with this study, and great questions about it. Another question that came in is, aren't there any security concerns with QR codes? I'd be interested to hear what you think about this.
I saw an article about that recently. Yes. And I think that is where the trust piece really comes into. If you are putting this on any kind of marketing, got to make sure your branding is there. You've got those trust indicators. It is a risk. And I honestly don't have a good answer for you. That's something that I want to learn more about and do some research on too. But I think as long as you're creating these marketing pieces that are very clearly from your nonprofit, with maybe even a statement along the bottom, let people know, hey, you can trust us, but don't go scanning these random QR codes that you see around town. Because yeah, that did come up. And I'm really appreciative that someone brought that up too. But now you've inspired me to go look for more information about that as well.
So I guess just for those of us who are less familiar with that concern, is this analogous to something like phishing, where in other words, somebody might put something out with your brand on it, put a QR code, but it's really just to bring you in and I don't know, pretend to be you or gather information from you. Okay. You talked about trust a lot in the presentation for very good reasons. I mean, it informs so much of what we talk about in the field right now, including this issue of retention, which you were addressing at the end. And I'm wondering if you see big differences in the way trust is, in the markers of trust among these different, especially generational cohorts, and some of the things that people are doing to address them. I know you talked about it in terms of, for example, celebrity influencers and whether those are more meaningful for one group than another. But are there other things that you can share that just kind of give us general guidelines for how to make sure that, especially for rising generations who are really determining their own way of approaching philanthropy, that they need to see the things they need to see in order to trust us?
One thing that I do want to point out, I made sure to ask in this particular survey about how many people had participated in mutual aid, giving directly to people in the community, giving goods directly.
Yeah.
And younger generations responded to that at a much higher rate than those older generations. That seems to be kind of, to me, a reflection of that trust where, okay, I want to make sure that I'm getting this money or these goods and services directly to people. And I wasn't surprised by it. I've participated in that. I've seen a lot of younger folks, Gen Z, doing that as well, out in the park, serving meals. I think that's a really good way to appeal to those younger generations and say, hey, your actions, you can trust us. And this is a way for us to build trust. You are interacting directly with the people that we serve and making a difference there. That's just a small piece for the younger generation too. But I think really sharing that real impact with them in a visual way also helps. I think that impact in particular, and then just being able to get in there and actually participate is really important for them as well. But that mutual aid thing was kind of fascinating to me. That's been coming up a lot too. I don't know if anyone has heard kind of whisperings.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anyone talking about in the chat, but I'm sure that's something we're all kind of hearing or discussing in one way or another.
Mhm.
It's really important factor. Another thing you talked about a little bit was TikTok, and it
Mhm.
struck me with that. For those of us who are on TikTok, we know how sticky it is. It's a very fun place. But there have been concerns there also about security. Even from the White House saying be careful about TikTok. So there are lots of things along those lines. But the idea that people are using it that Gen Z
Mhm.
folks are using it as a search tool is very interesting. And it speaks again, maybe to this marker of trust. If that's where people are, that's where people want to get their information. They see it as less, scripted by Google, for example.
Mhm.
Then what is the message that we should take from that, especially in an environment where a lot of our organizations are saying, you really can't get much money from those people under the age of whatever. Um,
Mhm.
well, here's a way that you can engage with them today. And then they say, well, I don't even know what that TikTok thing is. How do you navigate that conversation when you've got actually two potential areas of prejudice? One about what people under, let's say, 30 will do, and the other is about a platform they maybe don't understand that well.
Mhm. I think if I am interpreting correctly, what I've heard about the social or the security risks there is that there's a lot of, the fake news, for lack of a better term. People are putting out false information through TikTok. And I confess I am not a TikTok pro. I scroll through. I don't participate in any real way. We will be having some presentations on TikTok from experts. I can't speak to it, to be honest. But if it's anything like other platforms where you have that verification opportunity for your organization, that would be an important thing to pursue. So if people are seeing posts from you, these videos from you, there's this verification saying, here's our trusted marker. We are a real organization. The information we're sharing with you is real. Um, and then as far as not being able to navigate the platform, hey, I'm in the boat with you too. There's a lot of learning to do. There's a learning curve with a lot of these new tools. Getting
Sure.
out there and just finding out more about it. And I may have missed part of that question. Could you kind of repeat the last part if I missed
Oh,
something? Sorry.
well, part of this is really about whether or not people
Ooh.
should invest their time in the rising generation, I'm asking that rhetorically because I believe they
Oh
should.
yeah,
But I
I
know you can
totally
answer that
agree.
better than I can.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Think about it as building that relationship, starting it early. Of course, if folks don't have money now, but the impression you make if you're ignoring this generation and then, 10 years down the line, they've got a full-time job, they suddenly have money, and you just come out of the woodwork and ask for it. That's not a great first impression. I'm going to give to the organization that approached me 10 years ago when I didn't have a dime, but they wanted to engage me in some way and get me involved in their mission through volunteering, whether digitally, in person, or just finding out more information about the mission. I want that relationship. I want people to make the effort uh, to engage me.
This has been brilliant. How can people get more information? Can you just share that verbally and maybe on the screen how they can find? And there you go.
Sure,
Um,
there's the QR code.
so
You can
here's
text
the
it.
here's here's the QR code. If you're live with us, you can take a picture of it. I suppose if people are watching this on video, they can do the same.
Mhm.
Just pause that screen, shoot that picture, and you can be led directly to this excellent report. But your guidance through it has been so helpful. So thank you so much, Sarah. We really appreciate it. And you're going to be doing this again. So when could we expect the newest version of this report? When do you expect that to come out?
Summer of next year, we should be releasing a new version of this. So I am very excited, very far in advance. And if you do have any questions about this, I can put up the info@onecause.com email address. If you had questions that didn't get answered, please feel free to send those in. They'll make their way to me and I'm happy to respond or find out an answer for you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sarah Sebastian, for this excellent presentation of this really mind-bogglingly rich body of data that I certainly hope will inform what we do as we think about things, especially as we exit this particular version of the pandemic into a whole new series of events next year. it's going to be very helpful to be doing that thoughtfully instead of just guessing. So really do appreciate you. Appreciate all of you for joining us live, as well as those of you who are watching this after the fact. And I do want to encourage you to join us for future sessions in the series. We have about 24 in this quarter alone, and that includes 2 sessions next week. On fundraising on fundraising in an inflationary period. That's on November 8th. And then planned giving in a down market. It sounds like a downer of a week, but it's just looking at the realities of the stock market and the inflation. And those are both being done by Randall Hallett, who's a good friend of us in the sector. So I hope you'll come back and join us for that. Some of those things that we need to know in order to be successful at the end of the year and next year. Plus, we're doing something coming up on the 14th and the 15th in the series, which you'll want to read about over at DonorSearch.net. So be on the lookout for that. If you're not on the list, get on it. You can do it there. If you have any questions about any of this content, or you have a suggestion for something we need to focus on in the future, we do want to hear it. You can reach me at that's Jay, at DonorSearch.net. So until next time, thanks so much for hanging out with us. We appreciate you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.